Good evening, welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Zakka Jacob. Two big developments concerning social media giants. The Delhi police team of the special cell visited the offices of Twitter last night to serve notice on the Twitter representatives for a manipulated media tag on one of the tweets put out by the BJP Sambit Patra on what was an alleged Congress toolkit. The second big development, which has greater consequences, social media giants like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram now just have 24 hours more to comply with new rules that have been put in place by the IT ministry, failing which they could potentially become non-functional from the day after. These two topics we will debate tonight on Viewpoint, but first, the story.
आज कांग्रेस पार्टी का एक टूल किट चल रहा है.
A week ago, BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra addressed the press over what he called a Congress toolkit, designed to destroy Prime Minister Modi's image over the government's handling of the COVID crisis.
जो नया स्ट्रेन आया है जिसको कि WHO में भी मना कर दिया गया है, इंडियन स्ट्रेन नहीं बुलाना है, उसके साइंटिफिक नाम से उसको एड्रेस करना है. मगर यहाँ कांग्रेस पार्टी कहीं ना कहीं जो निर्णय WHO में भी हुआ है उसके विपरीत जाते ये कह रही है कि आप उसको इंडियन स्ट्रेन बुलाइए और तो और उसे मोदी स्ट्रेन बुलाइए.
The allegation sparked off a series of events which has left the microblogging giant facing an uncertain future in India. 2 days after Patra's press conference, Twitter tagged a post of his on this alleged Congress toolkit as manipulated media. It's a term used by social media platforms to flag off fabricated or fake media. The tag drew a sharp reaction from the government, which called Twitter biased. Then on Monday morning, a team of Delhi Police's special cell landed up at Twitter India's Delhi and Gurgaon offices to serve the social media platform a notice. The cops wanted to know what information Twitter has about the so-called toolkit and why they had chosen to give the manipulated media tag. But the offices were shut as most employees are working from home due to the lockdown. The visit, though, sparked a political firestorm. The opposition called it nothing short of intimidation.
Modi government is raiding Twitter offices both in Delhi and in Gurgaon. May I ask why? The guilty people are sitting in BJP headquarters and in seat of power.
The BJP argued that Twitter cannot run away from its responsibilities.
The Delhi police has asked Twitter CEO India to explain if they have some information regarding the Congress toolkit. Twitter cannot run away from their responsibility.
The friction between Twitter and the government has been increasing since January this year. The two have squared off over critical tweets on a range of issues from the farmers' protests to the government's handling of the second wave. And amid this tussle, time is running out for Twitter and other social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram. In February, the government had issued new guidelines which required social media companies to appoint a resident grievance officer, a chief compliance officer, and a nodal contact person. The deadline to comply with these guidelines ends tonight, and any failure to do so could lead to legal action. So when you add it all up, is it a genuine crackdown or an attempt to silence?
All right, joining us on the talking point, China NC spokesperson of the BJP, Aman Pawar, spokesperson of the Congress Party, Pawan Dugal, Supreme Court advocate and cyber law expert, and we'll also be joined by Abhijit Majumdar, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of the audio platform earshot.in. Let me start with you, Shaina. What is the point of raiding Twitter offices, serving notices to Twitter employees? Because if the basic premise is that this was an alleged Congress toolkit, then you should be raiding the Congress Party headquarters and not the Twitter office.
So, Zakka, the Ministry of Electronics and IT issued a strong communication to the global team of Twitter objecting to the use of manipulated media. Now, the government's letter has asked two questions. One is this prejudged prejudice and a deliberate attempt to color investigations? There's been no reply from Twitter. And if there is a status as an intermediary and its credibility as a neutral, unbiased platform facilitating exchange of views, both of the government and of the exchange of users, has not been replied by Twitter, the Delhi police is well within its jurisdiction as part of a routine process to find out who facilitated this use of manipulated media. How does Twitter know about a toolkit?
and many other such questions. The social media giant has been constantly...
So on the one hand, on the one
Let
hand,
me
you are
just
saying
finish
it's
my
an
point.
intermediary and they have been taking refuge behind the fact that they are an intermediary, so therefore you can't penalize them for whatever stuff people put on those platforms. So that's their contention. Yet at the same time, you're saying it's the intermediary who should be raided and not the origin of this toolkit, this alleged toolkit. You should be raiding the origin of this toolkit, right? Not the intermediary.
I am making 2 points here. In February, the Modi government had questioned Twitter. They did not comply with the takedown orders related to multiple issues, whether it was the farmers' protests, demeaning India, right now fighting off a pandemic, amplifying misinformation in relation to multiple issues, and pro-Khalistan movements backed by Pakistan with evidence to suggest so. Now, all these have been questioned on multiple occasions, and Twitter can choose to use this kind of manipulated media tag. What does that say? That means they're not a bias. They are completely biased. And
Okay.
there are questions that need to be answered. There is
Okay.
section
No.
69A
But,
of
the question to be asked, the question to be asked is bias a crime? And if you're accusing the platform
On
of being
social
biased,
media?
then you should not give them legal cover of being intermediaries.
social
They should be
media, the
held
only
legally
platform-
culpable for whatever users put on their platform. Be that as it may, let me go to Aman Pawar and ask you a
only
simple question,
platform
Aman Pawar.
on social
The
media
complaint
which is not
was
biased
lodged
is
by
who?
two Congress
Which has
leaders.
adhered
This
to.
whole probe by the Delhi Police Special Cell was launched on the basis of a complaint by two Congress leaders, and now they've withdrawn their complaint. Why? You are alleging
So
that this
let
is
me-
a forgery. You are alleging that the BJP
Zakka,
leaders, Ambit Patra, etc., have done
apart
this
from-
forgery. Why have you
Yes.
then withdrawn this complaint?
Zakka, apart from being the spokesperson, I'm also the lawyer in this matter, and I must tell you that on 18th May, we lodged a complaint with Delhi Police saying that these are forged letterheads on which Bharatiya Janata Party spokespersons are holding press conferences and are trying to divert attention from the entire issue of COVID pandemic to an alleged
does that
toolkit
justify
attributing
you
it to the
using
Congress.
India's strain and
Can she
Modi's
not
strain?
speak in between? Zakka, can she not speak in between?
No,
So-
no,
I
will
okay,
have
no,
to
go,
use
no, but
those
please
words
also
like
answer my
India's
question.
strain and
Didn't
Modi's
you
strain.
subsequently withdraw the
I
same
am-
complaint that you're referring to?
I am answering that. Can she not talk in between? So on 18th May, we
Yes.
filed a complaint, but the Delhi police till date has not registered an FIR against the BJP leaders. So what we did was that since the Delhi police failed to register an FIR, we filed the same complaint in Chhattisgarh, and Chhattisgarh police has already registered an FIR, has served a notice upon Mr. Sambit Patra, which he failed to join investigation in. And now what Delhi police is doing is
Sir, you are a
completely off the
lawyer.
books.
No. One second.
Sir,
There is
let me tell you,
there is a principle of jurisprudence. No, one second. Sir, Aman, you're the lawyer in this case. I'm asking you. There is a principle of jurisprudence. What sense does it make? For the so-called, you are claiming that this is a forgery, right? You are claiming these are fake
Yes.
documents. All of
Yes.
this happened in Delhi, according to you. Did not happen in Chhattisgarh.
No.
You registered a
Sir,
complaint in Delhi, and then you went on to withdraw that complaint. Why?
Sir, let me tell you, please do not teach me law. Firstly, when forgery is committed on a social media platform by putting up tweets, by putting up material on a social media platform, then the jurisdiction is pan-India. So hence, until date, the question should be asked to Delhi police that why till date have they not registered an FIR in the case? And instead of questioning Mr. Patra, who committed this forgery, Mrs. Smriti Irani, who committed this forgery, Mr. JP Nadda, they are raiding Twitter offices. The same social media giant, which held the BJP's meteoric rise.
You will know, as a lawyer, sir, you will know how many thousands of complaints that ordinary people file before the police across this country is not converted into an FIR, be that as it may.
And-
Let me go to
Zakka.
Pawan Dugal, and I want to focus on the second part of this
Zakka,
debate.
on how many-
Second part of the
and-
debate, please.
and
Please,
is the
Aman,
Delhi police
let me go to
authorized to
Pawan Dugal and to
conduct
Abhijit, please.
raids
Pawan
without
Dugal, the second
registering
part of this
FIR?
debate is about these new rules that have been notified by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The social media giants had 3 months to comply with them. tonight, I think, is the last day. From tomorrow, if they don't comply, technically, will these platforms be liable to become non-functional in the country? What is expected to happen to these platforms from tomorrow? Because clearly they have not complied so far.
Well, the skies are not falling down tomorrow. The fact is, yes, the 90-day period will be over, but there'll be no basis for blocking these particular platforms, primarily because the blocking of the entire platform cannot be done. There are only certain limited circumstances in which blocking can be done under Section 69A of the IT Act. But yes, these platforms have now to be prepared to actually play with fire. Because if there is political will on the part of the government is now going to go in two distinctive directions. Number one, stripping these intermediaries of their statutory exemption from legal liability under Section 79 of the IT Act. And number two, the government can actually start criminal prosecution against these companies and against their top management for various offences under the Information Technology Act 2000 and also under the Indian Penal Code. Now that's a game-changing moment. Why? Because we've had various other rules under the IT Act, but never earlier was there a criminal liability for non-compliance. Here right now is a criminal liability for all these significant social media intermediaries and their top managements. But again, the fundamental issue will be, will the government have the political will at the time when it's almost so much stressed because of the COVID-19 pandemic?
So let me understand this in layman terms. Up until now, if a user posted whatever incendiary stuff on any of these platforms would take refuge behind the fact that they are simply an intermediary. They're not a publisher. Like for example, the laws that govern newspapers or electronic media in this country does not apply to these intermediaries because they're simply a platform. They're not a publisher and therefore they're not legally culpable. That will not exist anymore starting tomorrow if they fail to comply. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. In fact, that's already now not existing for 99% of the Indian companies who already are intermediaries and who have not complied with their parameters of due diligence under the IT Rules 2021. But for these big tech companies, from the midnight of tonight, we will see that their statutory exemption will evaporate, which means that they can be made liable. They can be made liable for paying damages by way of compensation. They can be made criminally liable. And if the government has the political will, the government is likely to launch criminal prosecution against these companies and top management. Now, once a criminal prosecution is initiated, that itself will have a huge deterrent effect upon all stakeholders that look good, bad, or worse. Till such time these rules are not set aside by a court of competent jurisdiction, you would be required to comply with the rules. So therefore, we are in a different league altogether. India is doing an experiment that has not yet been done anywhere else in the world. We'll have to wait and watch how the political will transform this experiment into a reality or into just a paper tiger.
That is absolutely par for course, because if that applies to newspapers and websites and electronic media, then why should it not apply to these intermediaries? For far too long, they have taken refuge behind the fact that they're just platforms and they don't have any legal culpability. Let me go to Abhijit and let's leave aside the legal part of it. I want to talk about what seems to be a larger ideological / political sort of clash of narratives, as it were. Why is there a feeling amongst the Indian right that this whole thing is a conspiracy to try and control the narrative, a conspiracy to try and defame India, defame Mr. Modi? Much like what the American right feels that Trump was, systematically and institutionally silenced by big tech companies. This is what they're attempting to do here in India as well. What evidence is there to suggest that there is this global conspiracy, as it were, Abhijit?
Zakka, you could look at it from an ideological clash point of view. I mean, yes, India's right and nationalists feel that they have been, repeatedly targeted, right-leaning handles. If you remember, in fact, it started in 2012 under the UPA, when they actually, where actually Twitter had no role, but it circumvented Twitter and got certain right-leaning so-called troll handles barred through ISPs and stuff. And then they brought the 66A, that draconian IT Act law. Now the thing is that, and that this has continued. Now then, from there, Twitter took over. A lot of right-leaning handles have been, have complained of being shadow banned by not just Twitter but also Facebook. Their following has been, drastically eroded or capped at a certain level for years. So this has been happening. But what what I want to say is that a player like Twitter, big tech, has started behaving like the neo-colonizers. It is like the old colonial powers of Britain, Portugal, and others. They feel that they are above all a nation's laws. Now this cannot happen, and they are absolutely opaque. The point is that it is not about the contents of the toolkit, but under which process did Twitter tag this manipulated media? When Twitter deplatformed Trump, for instance, Macron had said that this is a terrible precedent. Getting a sitting president deplatformed, imagine the audacity of big tech. It shouldn't be so easy. For instance, and it is, let me assure you, it should be above ideological lines. For instance, in India, Sanjay Hegde has been deplatformed. I do not agree with his political views at all. But my point is, what gives Twitter the power to deplatform and silence somebody like Sanjay Hegde? Was Sanjay calling for mass violence or genocide or something? What is and they never explain the process. It is not transparent. The algorithms are never explained or made transparent. So Twitter has to take it has to be brought under some Indian law. And what is going to happen from tonight onwards? And I agree with the speaker before me that if the government has political will, it should take away the intermediary status, because it gives tremendous power. If you're an intermediary, then behave like an intermediary. Don't behave like a publisher. And if you are behaving like a publisher, then you have the concomitant the responsibilities and accountability that come with it. You have to submit to the law of the land. That is very, very
should be applicable to them as well.
Yeah, it should be applicable to them, and it is not just.
I'm afraid I'm going to thank all our guests because I agree with the basic point that's been made. There should be transparency in the process. How do they go about deplatforming people? Number two, it can't be seen merely from an ideological prism. And number three, if you're an intermediary, then you have to act like an intermediary. You should not be having deplatforming powers. And if you're not one, then all the legal liabilities and criminal culpabilities that come with being a publisher should be applicable to these platforms as well. But thank you very much to all our guests. We're getting a piece of breaking news, and this concerns the Indian Premier League. Remember, it had to be curtailed amidst the second surge of the corona pandemic. We're now getting information that the remainder of the IPL 2021 will be played in a window between September 19-20th to the 10th of October. It is going to happen in the United Arab Emirates. There are 31 matches that are remaining in the IPL. It will be split into 10 double headers, 7 single headers, and of course the playoffs. And this would be crammed into a 3-week window between the 19th, 20th of September to the 10th of October. Anand has more details on this. So Anand, so the BCCI keen on wrapping this up, and they finally have managed to find that little window of 3 weeks between late September, early October.
Yes, because November onwards, the ICC T20 World Cup. So before that, it'll work as a warm-up for all the players also, the T20 World Cup, the IPL. And the fact is that there is a sponsorship commitment. Now, remember, Zakka, just earlier in the morning, we had the confirmation from all the sponsors that yesterday they had taken a decision that they will continue to hold all the monies and the outlays which were committed for this season's IPL, and they were not going to withdraw. And perhaps that was the indication that the season will be completed. The BCCI at all points in time had said that they will will complete the season. They just said that we put the season on hold or suspended it for this point. Now the UAE, they've looked at this option as the UAE because the last time around also they were able to hold the IPL successfully within the UAE, and they were able to manage the windows or the player bubbles, the bio bubbles far better, and they believe that they'll be able to do it. Whether or not all the players will be vaccinated before they go in there and will vaccination become mandatory, we'll have to look at the protocols that they follow. But this 21-day window has now been carved out, and the remaining 31 matches will be played in these 21 days.
All right, Anand, thanks very much for those details. We're getting another piece of breaking news, and this is in response to a series that we've been running here on CNN News 18 on COVID orphans, children who've been orphaned because of COVID-19, losing both their parents. Now, the Women and Child Development Ministry has responded to this series. In fact, they have said that so far, according to the information available with the ministry, there are only 577 reported cases of COVID orphans across the country. The ministry has asked from respective states the statistics in those respective states of the COVID orphans. Let me go across to Pallavi Ghosh with more details. Pallavi, so finally the central government, the Ministry of Women and Child Development, taking cognizance of this problem.
Yes, absolutely, Zakka. And I think the main message which is coming out from the ministry and the government is that don't spread panic. Remember, just a few days back, the minister had tweeted to say that no one can offer any child who has been orphaned for adoption or even offering to take for adoption. There's a helpline number 1098. What we are also being told by our sources is that the ministry has got in touch with every state asking them their figures of reported cases of COVID orphan. That number has now come up to only 577, but attention and care would be provided to all these children, legal help or child counseling, whatever the case may be. Some states, in fact, Zakka has reported 0 cases of COVID orphans. In some cases like Delhi, the figure is 1. But the government has also sanctioned around 10 lakh rupees to every district, and more facilities are being offered by other schemes to ensure that these children are taken care of. The government says don't create panic. It can give rise to child trafficking and people taking advantage of the situation.
All right, Pallavi Ghosh, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much. Finally, as we wrap up, and this is a story that we broke first on CNN News 18, fugitive diamantier Mehul Choksi has now reportedly fled from Antigua, where he's been for the better part of the last 2 or 3 years since he fled from India as an accused in the PNB scam, the multi-crore scam. A massive manhunt has been launched to nab him. Antiguan officials are set to be in talks with officials of other Caribbean nations. Meanwhile, the Antiguan Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, has told CNN News 18 in an exclusive conversation that they are not aware of Mehul Choksi escaping to Cuba or to any other Caribbean country. The CBI too has taken note of this. They're likely to approach the Interpol to track down Mehul Choksi.
Any details that you could share, please?
Well, there's nothing new. You probably would have heard by now that someone from his household reported him missing. Mm-hmm. The police has since found the vehicle that he was driving, but have not been able to determine his whereabouts.
You know, there have been some media reports in Antigua suggesting that he might have escaped to Cuba or some other Caribbean country.
Well, we are not aware of that. First of all, I can tell you that there was no movement at the airport that would have allowed for that type of traffic. I don't know if he would have taken a boat to Cuba, but no one knows for sure exactly what the situation is. It's still early days, and law enforcement is there with the matter to try and locate him. But so far, it's a missing report, and no one knows exactly what the situation is.
Okay, so just to confirm, there was, according to media, that he was having some dinner last night in the south of the island, and that's where he was missing. Any details on that?
Well, he ostensibly left home to have dinner, did not return home, and as I said before, a member of his household reported him missing. The police have since found his vehicle around the vicinity of where he had dinner, and they're now trying to locate him.
Could you please tell us the entire sequence of events and how did you come to know that Mr. Choksi is missing?
We were shocked and they were fearful that what has happened, and they were very worried that Mr. Mehul Choksi had not returned, and they informed me that they had lodged a missing complaint with the Antiguan police, and the Antiguan police seized the CCTV footage where they last were able to see Mr. Mehul Choksi at 5:15, and they have given an official press release also. And Antiguan police is now joined by the CID also in Antigua, and they are searching for Mr. Mehul Choksi. And I joined 1 minute back, and I heard the term being used that he is Farar. There was no reason for him to be Farar because he was perfectly legally safe in Antigua, because we have taken stay from the Antiguan High Court on forget the extradition, even on the processing of any extradition request that might have been given or might be given by the Indian government, by challenging the viris, that is the constitutional validity of the Antiguan Extradition Act as well as the Antiguan Citizenship Act. So Mr. Mehul Choksi had no legal issues. Even before the request could have been processed against him would have taken years, and he's an extremely sick person. So there is no question of being Farar. The family is searching and the police is searching, CID is searching.